The sixth session of the Senate in the third regular session of the 60th Congress is hereby called to order. May I request everyone to rise for the prayer. Let us put ourselves in the presence of the Lord. Almighty Father, you are our supreme ruler and ultimate source of every grace and blessing. We humbly bow our heads with grateful hearts to give thanks to for the privilege of receiving your unconditional love every day. We rejoice in this opportunity to gather once again and work together in pursuit of the common good. May we see today's session as a way of serving you for your honor and glory. Lord, send your Holy Spirit upon us to lead and direct us in making wise decisions. Bless us with your vision and wisdom to enable us to think and act right and fair. We pray for open minds and hearts so that we may be always mindful of your will and the needs of all. Be our guide as we fulfill our duties and responsibilities to be deserving of the power and authority entrusted to us as the leaders of our country. O gracious God, we humbly seek to be your good stewards of your many gifts. Grant that we may become your living instruments of peace, justice, courage, and compassion for the benefit and well-being of all your people. We ask all this in your holy name. Amen. Amen. The Secretary will call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senator Sangara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano Alan Peter Compañero S., Cayetano Pia S., Defensor Santiago, Ejercito, Enrile, Escudero, Estrada, Gingona, Honasan, Lapid, Legarda, Marcos, Usmeña, Pimentel, Po, Recto, Revilla, Soto, Trillanes, Villar. Senate President Drilon.
14 senators are present. The chair declares the presence of a quorum. The majority leader is recognized.
Mr. President, I move that we dispense with the reading of the journal of the 5th session, August 4, 2015, and consider the same as approved.
Any objection? Hearing none. The reading of the journal of session number 5 on Tuesday, August 4, 2015 is hereby dispensed with, and the same is hereby approved.
Mr. President, before we move for the reference of business, may we acknowledge some guests in the gallery. We have Vice Governor Esteban Nonoy Contreras of the province of Capiz. We have students of Consular and Diplomatic Affairs of De La Salle College of St. Benilde, headed by Professor Dionisio. We also have the Executive Director of the National Council for Disability Affairs, Ms. Carmen Zubiaga, Mr. Mateo Lee, the Deputy Executive Director of the same body, the NCDA, Mr. Manuel Agkawili, the President of the Philippine Foundation for the Rehabilitation of the Disabled and President of Tahanan Walang Hagdan. And we also have former Congressman Rodolfo Tuazon and Governor Corazon Malanyaon.
Our guests are acknowledged. Their presence is made of record. We formally welcome them to the Senate.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
The Secretary will read the reference of business.
Bills on first reading. Senate number 2869 entitled An Act Granting Tax Relief to Persons with Disabilities, PWDs, and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Ramon Bong Revilla Jr.
Ways and Means.
Senate number 2870, an act institutionalizing the opening of night classes using existing high school and elementary school facilities all over the country and appropriating funds. Therefore, Senator Ejercito Estrada.
Education, Arts and Culture, Finance.
Senate number 2871, an act requiring the mandatory compliance by motorists of private and public vehicles to appropriately restrain all child passengers of motor vehicles. Senator Ejercito Estrada.
Public Services.
Senate Number 2872, an act penalizing the charging of taxi fares which are higher than the official rates, the failure to use the taximeters, or the refusal to carry without cost taxi passengers to their places of destination, Senator Ejercito Estrada.
Public Services,
Senate Number 2873, an act providing for the mandatory inclusion of anti-obesity education program and exercise, including play and traditional Filipino games in the preschool, elementary, and high school curricula, both in public and private schools and educational institutions, and for the purposes, Senator Ejercito Estrada.
Education, Arts and Culture,
Senate Number 2874, an act regulating the massage practice, Senator Defensor Santiago.
Health and Demography, Finance,
Senate Number 2875, an act to require elementary and secondary schools to have medical and dental records of their students, Senator Defensor Santiago.
Education, Arts and Culture,
Senate Number 2876, an act imposing higher penalties for the act of threatening or injuring a member of a government officials and law enforcement officer's family in order to influence, impede, or retaliate against him, Senator Defensor Santiago.
Public Order, Dangerous Drugs,
Senate Number 2877, an act to authorize the Secretary of Health to conduct or support research and demonstration projects on the use of financial and in-kind subsidies and rewards to promote wellness, adopt healthy behaviors, and use evidence-based preventive health services, Senator Defensor Santiago.
Health and Demography,
Senate Number 2878, an act to enhance and sustain the Universal Health Care, UHC, by establishing a medical residency expansion training program, appropriating funds therefore and other purposes, Senator Sani Angara.
Health and Demography, Finance,
Senate Number 2879, an act increasing the monthly pension under the Social Security System, amending for this purpose Section 12 of Republic Act Number 1161 as amended, otherwise known as the Social Security Act of 1997, Senator Cynthia Villar.
Government Organization, Public Enterprises, Labor, Employment, Human Resource Development.
Resolutions PSR number 1455, directing the Senate Committees on Health and Demography and appropriate Senate committees to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation into the rising incidence of food poisoning, especially among school children, Senator Lapid.
Sorry? Health and Demography.
PS Resolution number 1456, directing the Senate Committee on Environment and Natural Resources and appropriate Senate committees to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the reported sale of exotic and endangered animals in the Greater Manila area with the end in view of protecting our wildlife and put an end to the illegal trade of endangered species by Senator Lapid.
Environment and Natural Resources.
PSR 1457, congratulating and commending the University of the Philippines Concert Chorus, UPCC, for winning the grand prize in the 6th International Krakow Choir Festival, Krakowia Kantansa, held in Krakow, Poland, from June 11 to 14, 2015 by Senator Lapid.
Rules.
PSR number 1458, congratulating and commending film director Gabriel Fernandez and actress Evangeline Rose Hill Eigenman, popularly known as Cherry Hill, for winning Best Film and Best Lead Actress respectively in the recently concluded 2015 Madrid International Film Festival held in Madrid, Spain on 11 July 2015, Senator Lapid.
Rules.
PS Resolution number 1459, urging the Senate Committee on Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship to conduct a study in aid of legislation on the mechanism to strengthen the Philippine textiles and weaving sectors, including the promotion of heritage fabrics like Tinalak, Kifia, Ablon, Inabos, Inamay, and Abel Iloco, aimed at globalizing and promoting the competitiveness of the said industry, Senator Grace Poe.
Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship.
PSR number 1460, a resolution condemning in the strongest possible terms the harassment of alleged state agents against public sector unionists by Senator Ramon Bong Revilla Jr.
Justice and Human Rights.
PSR number 1461, resolution directing the proper Senate committee or committees to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the reported dumping of wastes from Canada at a sanitary landfill in Capas, Tarlac, Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy Espinay.
Committee on Environment, Natural Resources, Foreign Relations.
PSR number 1462, expressing the profound sympathy and sincere condolences of the Senate on the death of retired Supreme Court Justice Florence D. Regalado, Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy Espinay.
Rules.
PSR 1463, directing the Senate Committees on Environment and Natural Resources and Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development to look into the environmental and occupation standards being enforced by government agencies and local government units in small-scale and large-scale mining sites in the country, in light of the reported collapse of a portion of the open-pit coal mine in Semirara Island, Antique, leading to multiple fatalities sa Ligarda.
Environment, Natural Resources, Labor, Employment, Human Resource Development.
Communications letters from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas transmitting to the Senate copies of the following certified and authenticated BSP issuances in compliance with Section 15A of RE 7653, Memorandum numbers 2015-24 and 25, dated 27 May and 22 June 2015, circular letters number CL 2015-32, 33, 34, 5, 6, 7, 8, 39, and 40, dated 28 May, 3, 11, 15, 26, 30 June, and 3 July 2015, and circular numbers 881 and 82, dated 9 and 30 June 2015.
Banks, financial institutions, and currencies.
Additional reference of business bills on first reading. Senate number 2880, an act to protect workers and their families from the hazards of working in agricultural sites by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Committees on Agriculture and Food, Health and Demography.
Senate number 2881, an act requiring the installation of carbon monoxide detectors in school buildings, Senator Defensor Santiago.
Education, Arts and Culture, Health and Demography.
Senate number 2882, an act to provide for communications training to improve the ability of scientists to interact with policymakers, Senator Defensor Santiago.
Science and Technology, Finance.
Resolution PSR number 1464, directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation in the system of availment of benefit packages by patients or beneficiaries, particularly the hemodialysis package under the National Health Insurance Program of the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation, or PhilHealth, introduced by Senator Sinchay Villar.
Health and Demography.
Second additional reference of business bills of first reading. Senate number 2884, an act granting to senior citizens a minimum of 5% discount on the first 150 kilowatt hours of electricity and on the first 50 cubic meters of water consumption, and exemption from the value-added tax, VAT, amending for this purpose Republic Act number 9994, otherwise known as the Expanded Senior Citizens Act 2010 by Senator Grace Poe.
Social Justice, Welfare, Rural Development, Ways and Means.
Senate number 2885, an act establishing an on-site, in-city, or near-city resettlement program for informal settler families in accordance with the People's Plan, and mandating relocating local government units to provide other basic services and livelihood components in favor of the recipient local government unit, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 7279 as amended, otherwise known as the Urban Development and Housing Act of 1992, Senator Ramon Bong Revilla Jr.
Urban Planning, Housing and Resettlement, Local Governments.
Senate number 2886, an act regulating street and road signs, waiting sheds, speed bumps, sidewalks, pavements, street lights, and other similar infrastructures, prescribing the specification and measurement standards therefore and for their purpose, Senator Escudero.
Public Works.
Senate number 2887, an act defining electronic violence against women and their children, providing protective measures and prescribing penalties, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 9262, otherwise known as the Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children Act of 2004, Senator Ramon Bong Revilla Jr.
Women, Children, Family Relations, Gender Equality, Science and Technology.
Senate number 2888, an act mandating a 2,000 peso across-the-board increase in the monthly pension with corresponding adjustment of the minimum monthly pension under the Social Security System, amending for the purpose Section 12 of Republic Act number 1161 as amended, otherwise known as the Social Security Act of 1997, Senator Gingona III.
Government Corporations, Public Enterprises, Labor, Employment, Human Resources Development.
Senate number 2889, an act institutionalizing the nationwide implementation of the Jumpstart Philippines program and providing funds therefore, Senator Sani Angara.
Labor, Employment, Human Resources Development, Finance.
Committee reports. Committee report number 199, prepared, submitted joint by the Committees on Ways and Means, Social Justice, Welfare and Rural Development on Senate number 2890 with Senators Recto, Paulo Benigno Bamakino IV, Legarda, Sani Angara, and Maria Lourdes Nancy Espina as authors thereof, entitled an act expanding the benefits and privileges of persons with disability, PWD, amending for this purpose Section 32 of Republic Act 7277, otherwise known as the Magna Carta for Persons with Disability, as amended, and Section 35B of Republic Act 8424, otherwise known as the National Internal Revenue Code of 1997 as amended, recommending its approval in substitution of House Number 1039 and taking into consideration Senate Numbers 2483, 2713, and 2730, sponsor Senator Sani Angara.
Calendar for ordinary business.
Mr. President, I move that we transfer Senate Bill number 2890 under Committee Report number 199 from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders.
Any objection? Hearing none, so transferred.
With the consent of the Senate, I move that we consider Senate Bill 2890 under Committee Report number 199.
Consideration. Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
With the permission of the body, I move that the Secretary read only the title of the measure, Mr. President.
Secretary will do so.
Senate Number 2890, an act expanding the benefits and privileges of persons with disability, PWD, amending for this purpose Section 32 of Republic Act 7277, otherwise known as the Magna Carta for persons with disability as amended, and Section 35B of Republic Act otherwise known as the National Internal Revenue Code of 1997 as amended.
Ito. Sa atin. Mr. President, I move that we recognize this representation to deliver a sponsorship remarks.
Senator Sani Angara is recognized.
Mr. President, I rise today to sponsor Senate Bill number 2890 under Committee Report number 199 on providing value-added tax exemptions to our PWDs or persons with disabilities. This bill is in substitution of House Bill number 1039 entitled An Act Exempting Persons with Disability from the Value-Added Tax on Certain Goods and Services, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 7277, otherwise known as the Magna Carta for Disabled Persons, taking into consideration the following Senate bills: Senate Bill number 2483, authored by Senate President Pro Tempore Ralph Recto, Senate Bills 2713 and 2730, authored by Senator Paolo Benigno Aquino IV, and all Senate bills propose the additional exemption of persons with disabilities from the value-added tax on certain goods and services, which are enumerated under Section 32 of Republic Act 7277 or the Magna Carta for persons with disability as amended. Who are PWDs, Mr. President? The United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities states that persons with disabilities include those who have long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairments which in interaction with various barriers may hinder their full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with others. Under RA 7277, disabled persons are those suffering from restriction or different abilities as a result of mental, physical, or sensory impairment to perform an activity in the manner or within the range considered normal for a human being. Based on the 2010 census on population and housing, there were 1.443 million PWDs, or 1.57% of the total population. This figure has substantially increased from the 2000 census, which only enumerated 935,000 PWDs, which represents only 1.23% of that year's population. Of the 17 regions, the 2010 census showed that Region 4A, or the Calabarzon region, registered the highest number of PWDs at 193,000. This is followed by the NCR region with 167,000 PWDs, while the region having the lowest rate of PWDs was the Cordillera or CAR region at 26,000. Furthermore, the survey indicates that the rate of disability was the highest in the age group of 5 to 19 years, our young people, Mr. President. A little or over 1/4 of all households have disabled youth, more than 1/4 have disabled senior citizens, and nearly half of all households have adult working age PWDs. Tunay po na nararapat lamang na bigyan ng iba yung atensyon at tulong ng ating gobyerno ang mga kababayan nating may kapansanan. Ang mga tulong na ito hindi lamang sa pamamagitan ng direktang tulong pinansyal, kung hindi pati na rin sa pagpasa ng mga panukalang batas na naglalayong mapagaan ang kanilang buhay. Isang magandang halimbawa ng batas na ito ay ang Republic Act 7277 o ang tinaguriang Magna Carta for Disabled Persons na ipinasa ng Kongreso noong 1992. This landmark rights and privileges of PWDs in the Philippines, and at the same time served as a strong deterrent against discriminatory practices against this vulnerable sector. RA 7277 focused on several important aspects such as employment, education, health, auxiliary social services, telecommunications, accessibility, and on civil and political rights such as their system of voting and their right to organize. Recognizing that there is still a lot to be done in uplifting the status of PWDs in our society, Congress decided to expand and strengthen the Magna Carta through the enactment of another law. Thus, RA 9442 was passed in April 2007, and among its amendments is replacing the nomenclature from being referred to as disabled persons to persons with disabilities. RA 9442 also provides PWDs with a 20% discount on the following: services in restaurants, recreation centers, hotels, and similar lodging establishments; admission fees in theaters, cinema houses, concert halls, circuses, carnivals, and other similar places of culture and leisure and amusement; medicines in all drugstores; medical and dental services, including diagnostic and laboratory fees in all government facilities, and professional fees of all attending doctors in all private hospitals and medical facilities; fare for domestic air and sea travel, as well as public railways, skyways, and in buses. Aside from the above discounts, Section 32 of RA 9442 also grants the following privileges to PWDs: educational assistance, continuance of the same benefits and privileges given by the GSIS, SSS, and Pag-ibig, special discounts in special programs for persons with disability on purchase of basic commodities, and provision of express lanes for PWDs in all commercial and government establishments. Mr. President, dear colleagues, this proposed measure aims to amend RA 7277 by widening the range of benefits and privileges currently enjoyed by our PWDs. Senate Bill 2890 seeks to grant PWDs an additional exemption from the payment of the VAT in selected transactions covered under the current Magna Carta in Section 32. This proposal aligns the PWD law with that of the expanded Senior Citizens Act of 2010, or RA 9994, which provides a VAT exemption to senior citizens on top of their 20% discount on particular goods and services. Kung may papasa natin ang batas na ito, tiyak na malaking ginhawa ang may dudulot nito sa ating mga kababayang PWD. A family spending $20,000, for instance, for medicines for their child can save up to $2,400 a month, equivalent to roughly more than a sack of rice, 3 to 4 LPG tanks, or a month's insurance premium. Ang malaking matitipid nila sa pinagsamang 20% discount at pagbawas ng VAT sa presyo ng mga produktong kanilang bibilhin o mga serbisyong kakailanganin ay sandyang mapapakinabangan ng husto ng ating mga kababayang may kapansanan. Dahil sa panukalang ito, ang inyong abang lingkod ay naniniwala na kahit papaano mababawasan ang problemang pinansyal na kinakaharap ng ating mga PWDs. The Department of Finance's PEG research on revenue forgone from this measure is pegged at 1.1 billion pesos, while the National Tax Research Center estimates 2.4 billion. We humbly submit that the actual foregone revenue may be lower considering the number of registered PWDs with IDs. The benefits to PWDs from this measure far outweigh the supposed revenue loss to the government. Huwag po nating maliitin ang natatanging potensyal ng ating mga kababayang PWD. Tunay na marami ng sa mga taong may kapansanan ang nagtatagumpay sa iba't ibang larangan gaya ng negosyo, edukasyon, politika at pampalakasan. Hindi nagiging hadlang ang kapansanan sa kanilang pagsisikap na makamit ang minimithing pangarap. One notable PWD that became a successful entrepreneur is Maria Gilda Quintua Nakahara. Gilda was born deaf, but despite this, she was able to finish her studies and opened her own travel and tour business in 2004. Her MGLQ Deaf Tour Assistance became known for its fast and reliable tour arrangements, and in fact, 2007, Gilda was chosen as one of the outstanding PWD entrepreneurs by the Go Negosyo Caravan for PWDs. Mahal na Pangulo, dito mismo sa ating Senado ay may mga empleyado tayong may kapansanan na nagpamalas ng kanilang abilidad at dedikasyon sa serbisyo. Isa na dito ay si Ginoong Romeo Estrada ng Legislative Budget Service. Nagtapos siya ng BA Commerce, nagtrabaho po sa Department of Agrarian Reform, at ngayon ay nagtatrabaho bilang isang Supervising Legislative Staff Officer 3. Nandiyan din po si Attorney Rudy Kimbo ng kasalukuyan ng ating Blue Ribbon Oversight Office Management. Nagsimula ang kanyang kapansanan nung binata pa, pero Siya ay nagpumilit na mag-aral, kung kaya't tuluyang naging tanyag na abogado. Siya ay minsan nagsilbing Chief of Staff ng yumaong si Senador Juan Flavier. Sabi nga niya sa isang talk sa UP Diliman, "Where there is a will, there is a way." These are just but a few examples of the potential that lies within each PWD. Truly, they have the capacity to become productive citizens of the nation, especially if we give them the necessary assistance and encouragement. Definitely, there is a need to spread PWD awareness among our countrymen, Mr. President, as there are only 28,344 registered PWDs with IDs as of August 2014. Mahal na Pangulo at sa mga kagalang-galang na kasamahan sa Senado, isipin na lang po natin ang pang-araw-araw na karanasan ng marami sa ating mga PWD o kababayang may kapansanan. Nais man nilang sumakay ng bus, hirap naman silang makakyat sa hagdanan dahil walang sapat na rampa. Hawak man nila ang bagong beep cards para sa LRT o MRT, bihira naman na may gumaganang escalator o masasakyan na elevator. Nakamamatay na ngang tumawid ng basta-basta sa ating mga kalsada. Paano pa po kaya ang mga PWD? Sa mga mas maunlad na bansa, Mr. President, hanggang sa pagtawid ng kalye, tinutulungan po ng Estado ang kanilang mga PWD. Sa mga pedestrian lane, may mga tunog, mga guhit at umbok or tactile surfaces sa kalsada na nagsisilbing gabay para sa dagliang pagtatawid ng ating mga PWDs. Nais po nating humalili sa mga bansang makabago at industrialized na mababatid ang kanilang kaunlaran hindi lamang sa statistika tungkol sa kanilang GDP or gross domestic product, kundi pati rin sa kalidad ng serbisyo at pag-aaruga nila para sa mga may kapansanan. In many a past State of the Nation address, Mr. President, our leaders have repeatedly expressed a desire to join the ranks of advanced economies and modern societies. This cannot be done by a high GDP or growth figure alone, but through proper care and affirmative action extended to a country's or a society's most disadvantaged and marginalized sectors. Hinihingi ko po ang inyong suporta para sa agarang pagpasa ng panukalang batas na ito na naglalayong palawakin ang mga benepisyong natatanggap ng ating mga kababayang may kapansanan. Isang paraan lamang po ito para tulungan silang makatawid at makaakyat sa kanilang buhay. Nais lamang po natin siguraduhin na hindi po sila nag-iisang pasan-pasan ang kanilang kapansanan. Salamat po, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Angara.
Mr. President, I think Senator Pia wishes to make a manifestation.
Senator
Yeah.
Pia Cayetano is recognized.
Thank you. Mr. President, may I register my desire to be a co-sponsor of the measure, and if I may just put on record my gratitude for Senator Angara for taking up the concerns of the PWDs. Very recently in social media, there were reports and even photos of Filipinos who were able and without any disabilities whatsoever, taking advantage of benefits that we have provided for the PWDs, such as using their parking spaces. The measure that Senator Angara is supporting is very much needed, but I do believe that we need a stronger campaign also for our countrymen to be more cognizant of precisely the reason why we are extending these benefits to them, because there is a special need for them. So I fully support the measure. I thank the gentleman for sponsoring this measure, but I urge all of us to be a part in making this a more PW-friendly environment, not just within our own homes, within our own environment, within the Senate, but everywhere we go. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Cayetano, and I agree with her that I think there is a need for a greater awareness campaign, Mr. President. In fact, the government itself is one of the greatest violators of the law requiring access, for instance. We have many old government buildings which have not been made accessible to our PWDs. So with that in mind, it would be an honor to have her as a co-sponsor, Mr. President. And Senator Recto is also an author of the measure. He has expressed his desire to deliver sponsorship remarks on Monday next week. So with that, Mr. President, we move to close consideration of Senate Bill 2890. Suspend consideration.
Consideration might be suspended.
Mr. President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill 2834 under Committee Report 176. This is the bill on PAGASA modernization, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
Consideration of the measure is in order.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status is the sponsor delivered his sponsorship speech last June 10. I thus move that we open the period of interpellations.
Period for interpellation is in order.
Move that we recognize the sponsor, Senator Recto.
Senator Recto is recognized.
To interpellate, I move that we recognize the minority leader, Senator Tito Soto.
Senator Tito Soto is recognized.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. President, hello, Mr.
Yes.
Mr. President, can you hear me?
Hardly. Please, the audio system is defective. 1 minute suspension. Ayusin mo yan.
Check mic. Check mic. Check. Check mic. Check. Hello, 1, 2.
We're ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the distinguished gentleman from Batangas, the reason why the governor of Batangas is successful, yield to some questions, Mr. President?
No, I think it's the other way around. The reason why the gentleman from Batangas is a successful senator is because of the governor from Batangas. Yes,
right.
willingly, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. President, at the outset, allow me to state for the record my full support for the PAGASA Modernization Act. We would just like to be clarified on 2 or 3 points. So, my first question, or my initial question would be, what is, or what are the laws that this act seeks to amend?
Basically, the PD creating PAGASA would be the most important one.
All right. This is a presidential decree.
That is correct.
Would you have the decree number again, please?
Yes, I do. It will be in my files.
For reference lang, Mr. President.
PD 78.
All right.
Amended by PD 1149. Further amended by 2 executive orders.
Sa ano, no? Sa repealing clause.
So we will notice there, Mr. President. So it was created in 1972. So that is many decades ago, and that is why we need to modernize PAGASA considering the changing of the times, especially because of climate change today, among many other things, Mr. President.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Now, may I bring your attention to Section 6. You have a phrase there that says, an advanced degree in meteorology or related fields of study. Is this the equivalent of or to master's degree or doctorate degree?
Equivalent to a master's degree, Mr.
All
President.
I see. Thank you, Mr. President. Now, in the same provision, Section 6, on the qualifications for appointed administrator or deputy administrator, it is stated that he or she must be at least 3 years of competence and expertise in meteorology, geophysics, astronomy, or allied sciences. May we know the basis for the 3-year competence and expertise qualification? Is this the equivalent of work experience, Mr. President?
Yes, equivalent for work experience, and that would be the minimum requirement, Mr. President. In many cases, many of the people in PAGASA have been there for decades, Mr. President.
A minimum lang.
Minimum, yes.
And you feel that this minimum would suffice to qualify as administrator of PAGASA?
That is correct. That is the
That
suggestion.
would have
of the
enough
committee.
experience.
That is correct.
May we know if your bill considered the possibility of requiring a career service executive or career executives service eligible for the aforecited positions, Mr. President?
For the 2 of the 3, yes, that is correct. The 2 of the 3 deputy administrators must be career.
Must be career.
It is also in the bill, Mr. President.
All right. May we know what section of the bill?
Section 5.
Section 5.
Line 20 to line 23. On the same page.
Line 22
Yes, to 23.
shall be career officers. Oh, no, that line, 22 to 23. All right.
Confusing lang, sir, kasi it's not on the qualification provision.
All right. I probably missed it because we were expecting it to be in the qualification provision. You wouldn't mind if we move it there, no? At the proper time? Or you want to retain it here, Mr. President?
Section 5 talks about the organizational structure.
Yes, but the proviso says that the 2 of the deputy administrators shall be career officers. Don't you want to place this under qualifications?
I'd be open to that,
All
Mr.
right.
President.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Is the 3 billion sourced from PAGCOR provided in Section 10 a one-time allocation, or is it something given on a yearly basis?
One-time allocation, Mr. President.
All right. Is it clearly stated in the bill, or
Yes, Mr. President.
one-time allocation?
One-time allocation.
All right. And what did PAGCOR say about the 3 billion allocation? Did
They
you
have,
consult
they
them?
have no objections, Mr. President.
Oh, very good.
They have no objection because this will be taken from the President's Social Fund.
No, not necessarily, Mr. President.
Yeah?
No, this will be taken from the in 2014, the 50% share of PAGCOR goes to the national government, to the Treasury, which is roughly 14 billion. So
50 excuse me.
Yes.
50%
of the
what?
national government share,
Of the national government, yes.
that's right, goes of the gross revenue of PAGASA or of PAGCOR goes to the national treasury. I do have a breakdown here, Mr. President. And
How much is the share, Mr. President, if you don't mind? How much
Yes,
is the
yes,
share
I
of
can
the
read it to
national
you.
government
Yes.
in income of PAGCOR?
Yes. The 50% national government share is 14 billion 157 million 34,712 and 43 centavos. That goes to the general fund.
All right, but of this national share, how many competing agencies expect assistance from PAGCOR? And how much does these agencies receive?
This is separate from the Dangerous Drugs Board of 60 million. This is separate from the share of the 5% Philippine Sports Commission. This is separate from the subsidy to host the LGUs, 502 million. This is separate from the 1% Board of Claims DOJ share of 32 million. Separate from the income tax of PAGCOR, which is 180 million. Separate from the National Endowment for Culture and the Arts. And the office is separate from the Office of the President of 1,067 million.
Do you expect this PAGASA to be on the top of the priority list of PAGCOR, Mr. President, once we pass this bill?
What we're doing here is putting money where our mouth is. If we are saying that it is imperative to modernize PAGASA, considering the challenges imposed on us by climate change, and that we are the one of the most, if not the most vulnerable country in the world as far as climate change is concerned, and the need for climate change adaptation, disaster risk management, so on and so forth, 3 billion is a small price to pay for modernizing PAGASA. And I've noticed that in the PAGCOR revenues, the revenues is roughly 40 billion. There is 14 billion lying around somewhere, which goes to the Treasury, and we're saying, why not give PAGASA 3 billion or more? The bill recommends 3 billion, but we have a shopping list from PAGASA, and what they actually need is roughly 4 billion. But we are mindful of the fact as well of the absorptive capacity of PAGASA. We are also mindful that every year we give them a capital outlay. So this is really to fast track in the next 3 years the PAGASA
the 3 billion.
3 billion.
But in your bill, we propose a continued yearly government appropriation, no?
No, it is not in the
For
bill,
its
but
implementation.
regularly
It's not.
in the General Appropriations Act, there is a capital outlay for PAGASA.
All right. I believe that's very important. You do not want to place that in this bill because I understand that the Typhoon Yolanda alone, the damage caused to the country was about 571
That
billion.
is correct.
5 billion, according
That is
to
correct.
LEDA.
That is
Ano?
correct. That is
And
correct.
then we hope that this measure be sufficient to help and prevent similar extensive damage to our
Correct.
infrastructure,
More so,
agriculture, di ba?
In addition to what you're saying, Minority Leader, Mr. President, if we take a look at the mandate that we're proposing in this PAGASA modernization, comparing it to the previous mandate of PAGASA, we're expanding the mandate of PAGASA. Mas maraming trabaho silang gagawin. Not only weather, they are not only also our national timekeeper, flood management is one, adaptation, malaki may tutulong din nila sa local planning, land use plan, urban planning, for disaster preparedness, among others, Mr. President. So we're expanding the mandate of PAGASA in this bill as well. And with that, you would need resources, additional manpower, and considering that they are scientists, engineers, I think they deserve a higher pay without distorting the salary standardization law.
So, are we guaranteed that the yearly appropriation in the GAA will be there? No,
that is for
notwithstanding the fact
yes,
that we're not
yes.
mentioning it in the bill.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, because that goes through Congress. And
All right.
at any given time, we can amend the GAA to provide additional funds for PAGASA, if need be.
All right. And then, of course, PAGASA will be submitting it anyway. Now, just one final matter I just want to be clarified. Trust fund, the trust fund.
Yes.
Mayroong trust fund. Will you tell me
Correct.
more about this? Because
Yes. The 3 billion,
di ba mayroong principle ng one fund, one packet? Ito ba, iba ito?
Ito kasi may earmarking. If we're earmarking, there will be a fund somewhere. We may call it a trust fund, we may call it a special fund, we can call it anything. Siguro, what we should not do with the trust fund is use it to buy government securities. Hindi tama na bibigyan natin ng 3 billion yung Pag-asa at pautangin ng Pag-asa sa Treasury. So the idea is for them to spend immediately the 3 billion to upgrade our modernize Pag-asa, to provide for redundancy, and in areas that we have a blackout or what you call a hindi pa nakukuha ng mga radar natin, halimbawa, not only in the Pacific but in the blind spots, so to speak, they should make the investments there. Not only that, Mr. President, but also localized weather forecasting. Halimbawa, sa Quezon City, you cannot lump the entire Metro Manila as one weather. Pwedeng iba ang potential weather disturbance, halimbawa sa Makati, sa Quezon City, sa Muntinlupa, so on and so forth. Just like in your smartphone, Mr. President, you know that there is the differences in temperature in Makati, Muntinlupa, Quezon City, San Juan, so on and so forth. So, can you imagine if we could provide that in the provinces so that our farmers and fishermen can benefit from this information? When to plow the fields? O halimbawa, kailan magkakaroon ng flooding sa EDSA? May app tayo. Para wag ka nang dumaan doon, dumaan ka na sa ibang kalsada. So
that is truly modernizing things.
That is right.
Yes.
So that is the idea behind this bill, Mr. President.
All right. Thank you very much for that. I wish to congratulate the gentleman for the measure. As I said, I am 100% behind the modernization. I remember in my younger days, pag sabi ng Pag-asa, walang naniniwala. Now, Mr. President, even before the modernization and after the modernization, I am so sure that
May Pag-asa na.
malaki ang Pag-asa. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Just a few questions from the
Sure,
chair
Mr. President.
to clarify.
Yes.
Simply put,
Yes.
we are earmarking
Correct.
3 billion
Correct.
from the share of the national government
Correct.
from the net income of PAGCOR.
Not the net income, because you are correct
Yeah.
in simple language, but when we write it kasi in the bill, it should not be net income because there's another accounting term for it. But that is correct,
But
Mr.
in
President.
effect,
Yes.
we're saying earmark 3 billion
Correct.
now. And that the mention of 14 billion is just an estimate of what.
That was 2014.
That was 2014.
Correct.
It doesn't really come into play in the law because we are just
Correct.
earmarking 3 billion. Now,
In 2012, it was 13 billion.
Yeah.
In 2013, they remitted to the Treasury 13.1. In 2014, they remitted 14.1.
in other words, what the sponsor is simply saying is that there are enough funds that are remitted to the National Treasury
That is correct.
that can accommodate a 3 billion earmarking one time.
Easily,
All right.
Mr.
Now,
President, yes.
who manages the trust fund? Is it a special account in the National Treasury?
It will be managed by the administrator of Pag-asa, but with the approval of the Secretary of the DOST, because Pag-asa is still an attached agency of the DOST.
Yes. I would request the sponsor to take a second look on the who has authority over the funds.
Yes.
Because I remember we also created a trust fund for the AFP modernization out of the sale of
Proceeds.
of the sale of the Camp Aguinaldo, Camp Bonifacio, from the
Yes.
proceeds of the sale of the military lands in Camp Bonifacio. Obviously, it was used somewhere else in the previous administrations. The AFP was not modernized. You do not know what happened to the modernization fund, which was annually, if I recall, 50 billion pesos. How much it amounted to, I do not know. But you hear horror stories like the same being used. For
My
some other
understanding,
purpose.
my understanding of that, if I recall, is that the income generated by the sale of that land went to the BCDA, if I'm not mistaken, and then they have expenses. So what they only remitted to the modernization was 5 billion every year.
Yes. But there was also a trust fund, and I don't recall exactly the mechanism. I remember
Correct.
there was a trust fund,
Correct.
and obviously it was used for purposes other than
That is correct.
the modernization
That is correct.
of the armed forces, which was a lot of concern
That is correct.
for our armed forces. Now, I noticed that of the amount put in a trust fund of 3 billion. Actually, this is not a trust fund because
We can call it something else, a special
you can call
fund.
it, because a trust fund indicates that you can attach the principal.
That is correct.
So
that is not the intention.
That is not the intention.
That is correct.
But you also provided that not less than 70% of the 3 billion will be utilized for capital
At the appropriate
outlays.
time, Mr. President, I think it should be 100% for capital outlay.
That was what I was leading to.
Yes, I was reading your mind, Mr. President.
Thank you. Because that-
I will accept from the Senate President an amendment to this.
Yes,
Mr.
because 30% is about 900 million.
Yes,
That's
that is
quite a
correct.
lot of money.
Correct.
For other, So, other than those clarificatory questions, the chair has no.
The President is correct. I don't think that it should not only be 70%, if at all it should be 100%. Because regularly they have for PS and MOE anyway.
And given the absorptive capacity, would the sponsor consider staggering it for 2 or 3 years?
That is possible, Mr. President,
Yes.
because under the bill anyway, it's a 3-year modernization plan.
That's correct. So the creation of a trust fund need not be done fully on year 1.
We are amenable, Mr.
Yes.
President.
Okay.
Always with the suggestions of the Senate President.
No,
The
we
committee is
are
amenable.
one here. We're just concerned about
Correct.
things like the absorptive
That
capacity
is
of the
correct.
agency,
Yes.
and you have money lying around there and all that stuff. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
President, I move that we recognize Senator Honasan for a few questions.
Senator Honasan.
Mr. President, will the distinguished Senate President Pro Tempore allow just one clarificatory question?
Willingly to a potential Vice President, Mr. President.
How will the team be called? If you're going to team up with
This
Vice
is an
President
idea of Senator Soto, Mr. President, Bihon.
Biho.
Mr. President, I would like to put on record that we fully support this bill.
Thank you, Mr. President.
My question is there anything in the bill prospectively that would provide an interface between this bill and another bill which we fully support, the prospective Department of Information and Communications Technology? Because
That is correct.
I was reading the
Yes.
Section 2 Declaration of Policy. My point would be to enhance our ability to safeguard, as a matter of constitutional principle, life, liberty, and property.
That is correct.
So the answer is,
Yes. Information technology will play a very, very important role.
in fact, Mr. President, this will be a game changer.
That is correct.
These two measures
That is
combined
correct.
will
That is correct.
radically change our ability
That is
to
correct.
safeguard life, liberty, and property.
That is correct.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you very
President.
much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah. Wala pa.
Mr. President, I move that we close the period of interpellations.
Any objection? Hearing none. Period for interpellation is terminated.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill 2834 under Committee Report number 176.
Consideration of the measure is suspended.
Mr. President, with the permission of the Senate, we take up one administrative matter. The names of the new Vice Chairman of the Committee on Finance were manifested yesterday in plenary. One of those designated Vice Chairman by the new Chair is Senator Bam Aquino, but since only members of a committee may be designated as Vice Chairman, there is a necessity to elect Senator Aquino to the committee. Thus, I move to elect Senator Aquino to replace Senator Lito Lapid in the Committee on Finance.
Any objection? Hearing none.
President, I move that we suspend session for a few minutes.
Session is suspended.
Yung weather forecast.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we resume consideration of proposed Senate Resolution number 1334 under Committee Report 137. This is the ratification to the Protocol Convention on International Civil Aviation.
Any objection? Hearing none. Approved.
The parliamentary status, Mr. President, of the measure is that the sponsor had delivered her sponsorship speech last May 19. I thus move that we open the period of interpellation.
Period for interpellation is in order.
I move that we recognize the sponsor, Senator Pia Cayetano.
Senator Pia Cayetano is recognized.
Mr. President, no senator has expressed his or her intent to interpellate on the measure. I thus move that we close the period of interpellations.
Period for interpellation is closed.
I move that we open the period of committee amendments.
Period for committee amendments is in order.
Mr. President, we do not have any committee amendments.
I thus move that we close the period of committee amendments, Mr. President.
Period for committee amendments is terminated.
I move that we open the period of individual amendments.
Period for individual amendments is in order.
There are, as far as we know, Mr. President, there are no reservations to make individual amendments.
There being no individual amendments, I move that we close the period, Mr. President.
Period for individual amendments terminated.
I thus move, Mr. President, to approve proposed Senate Resolution 1334 under Committee Report 137 on second reading.
Any objection? Hearing none. Approved.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of the measure.
Consideration of the measure is suspended.
Mr. President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we resume consideration of proposed Senate Resolution 1336 under Committee Report 139. This is the 1999 Montreal Protocol Convention for the Unification of Rules for International Carriage by Air.
Any objection? Hearing none. In order.
The parliamentary status, Mr. President, of the measure is that the sponsor delivered her sponsorship speech last May 19. I move that we open the period of interpellation.
Period for interpellation is in order.
I move that we once again recognize Senator Pia Cayetano, the sponsor.
Senator Cayetano is recognized.
There being no... I move that we recognize the Minority Leader, Mr. President, for his interpellation.
If you don't mind, Mr. President, just one question. I just want to make sure. This is a resolution agreeing to a convention.
Yes, Mr. President.
We do not
Yes.
need a two-thirds vote.
When we
On
approve it on third reading.
Third reading.
We need the two-thirds on
Yes,
third
that's
reading.
correct.
All right, thank you. No objection, Mr. President.
With no senator to interpellate, Mr. President, I move that we close the period of interpellations.
So terminated.
I move that we open the period of committee amendments.
Period for committee amendments is in order.
I don't think there are any, Mr. President.
We have no committee
So
amendments, Mr.
I
President.
move that we terminate the period of committee amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none. So terminated.
Move that we open the period of individual amendments.
Individual amendments is in order.
There are no individual
none.
amendments, so I move that we close the period of individual amendments.
Senator Cayetano, are there individual
We
amendments?
have no one has made any reservations, Mr. President.
All right. Such being the case, period for individual amendments is terminated.
Mr. President, I move that we approve proposed Senate Resolution number 1336 under Committee Report number 139 on second reading.
Any objection? Hearing none. Proposed Senate Resolution 1336 under Committee Report 139 is hereby approved on second reading.
I move that we suspend consideration of proposed Senate
Period
resolution.
for consideration suspended.
Welcome. Mr. President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill 2752 under Committee Report 130. This is the bill on microfinance NGOs.
Any objection? Hearing none. Consideration of the measure is in order.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status of the measure is that we close the period of committee amendments last August 3. I thus move that we open the period of individual amendments.
Period for individual amendments is in order. For the record, we will be using the version with which contains the approved committee amendments as of August 3, 2015. We recognize the sponsor, Senator Benigno Bamakino.
Mr. President, I think there are no senators who have signified intent to propose individual amendments.
Are there individual amendments being submitted to the chair?
No, Mr. President.
Okay. That being the case, Majority Leader?
I move that we close the period for individual amendments, Mr. President. Move to suspend for a few minutes, Mr. President.
1 minute suspension.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, there being no senators who wish to propose individual amendments, I move that we close the period for individual amendments.
Period for individual amendments is terminated.
I move that we approve Senate Bill number 2752 under Committee Report number 130 on second reading. So moved.
Any objection? Hearing none. Senate Bill number 2752, an act to strengthen non-government organizations engaged in microfinance activities for the poor, is hereby approved on second reading.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of the measure.
So suspended.
Mr. President, before we adjourn, I'd like the body to acknowledge our guest in the gallery. We have Mayor June Bitoonon of the Municipality of Kalayaan Islands of the Province of Palawan, Republic of the Philippines, Mr. President.
We will make sure that Kalayaan Island stays with the Republic of the Philippines.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Welcome, Mr. Mayor.
With that, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock of Monday, August the 10th, 2015.
Session is adjourned until the 10th of August, 2015 at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.